at Philips Domestic Appliances India. As you all know, Philips is one of the leading appliance brands in India and also globally. Pooja has been a business marketer for the last 14 years. She has experience of 14 years in this field, from building businesses from scratch to building brands, creating marketing strategies. She's done it all. Name it, and she's done it. Beyond her job at Philips, she enjoys working with startups and mentoring and supporting new businesses. She's also an angel investor. So thank you so much, Pooja, for joining us today. We are very happy to have you here, and we're eager to hear about your journey so far. And we're excited to learn from all the amazing experiences that you've had. We have a couple of questions prepared, and then we'll open the discussion for everyone else on the call to ask any questions that they might have.
Fantastic. Sounds fabulous, Anna. Thank you so much. I'm equally excited to be here. And I'm so happy to see a turnout of 60 odd people. And thank you to each one of you who's taking out time from their uber busy schedules. I understand everyone has packed calendars. It means a lot to me. Thanks a lot.
And thank you to you as well for accommodating us and helping us learn about your journey along with you. So I'll start with the first question, just for the audience. Please, could you tell the larger audience a little bit about your current role at Philips?
Sure. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Philips, which has now become Vasuni. As you know, I don't know how many of you are aware, but since probably
We are losing you, Pooja, in between. Is it me only? Sorry, I don't know. What is it?
I
Yeah,
don't know,
we're
someone else is
losing you. I think it's the connection.
Um, okay, I will try again, but there is very little that I can do about this because there's just one Wi-Fi connection in office. Hopefully this should work better. Am I better audible now?
Better now, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So Philips domestic appliances business globally got acquired by a private equity firm 2 years ago. And we have been rechristened as Vasuni India Holdings Limited um, in India. And I am the chief marketing officer for that company. This company operates across businesses in the household products space, the small domestic appliances category. And we have two brands there. There's brand Philips, under which we sell products pan India. And then there's brand Preeti, which is primarily a brand that is focused on South. As Chief Marketing Officer for this company and for both of these brands, it is part of my responsibility to ensure that both of these brands have a very strong brand funnel. They are high on brand preference. They are top of mind in terms of awareness, consideration, and conversion for consumers. It is also my responsibility to ensure the right media mix for the company and for the brands, and to ensure that we generate enough return on advertising spend across all the media that we invest in. As part of my role, I'm also responsible for the business end of the things, which is essentially that everything that is spent on marketing needs to come back multiplied multi times over, which means I'm responsible for top line and bottom line. ROI is how I would like to call it. I'm also responsible for the relationships of India country within our ecosystem with the rest of the globe and the rest of the world, which means how India is presented, how India is seen, if there are best practices emerging out of our country, if there are learnings that can be incorporated by other companies, by other countries across the globe. It is my responsibility to manage and drive that relationship and ensure that India always has a seat on the table as far as the global decision-making table is concerned. I'm also responsible for generating and assimilating and processing market intelligence, which means anything that is happening in the ecosystem from the perspective of marketing or business or the macroeconomy or consumer is something that my team or people in my team are responsible for processing and ensuring that those learnings and insights get translated into business relevant actions and get capitalized upon. Broadly, I think this is what I do.
Yeah, I think you've covered it all pretty much. And that's a lot of hats you're wearing. Um, I also read on your LinkedIn that you worked for a couple of months or a year or two with Coca-Cola. So how do your responsibilities and the environment differ in Philips versus your time at Coca-Cola?
So I spent a couple of years with Coke just before I joined back for Sony. And that role was very, very different from the role at Philips. So when I joined Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola was undergoing a structural transformation at an organization level. They had restructured their whole organization and they were globally re-looking at the way marketing was being done at Coke. Typically, if you were given the fact that you guys are all from media background, if you were to look at the way brands like Coke or Pepsi spend, their spends are largely focused on ATL media. Nearly 90-95% of their total advertising and promotion spends actually goes in just running TVCs on media, right? And I think Coke realized that it is important for them to now start looking at marketing in a different manner because running TVCs obviously is impactful, but the impact is diminishing over a period of time. And the sooner brands take cognizance of the fact that consumers are not just watching TV and making brand decisions, the better it is for them. So they wanted to transform the way they look at marketing and they were setting up a new way of marketing called end-to-end experience marketing, whereby I was responsible for setting up a team, not just for India, but also replicated globally across, which would look at a brand's marketing objectives and identify the full funnel of marketing that it needs to create in order to ensure that consumers notice and convert to the brand. This funnel was not limited just to creation of advertisement or running of advertisements on TV, but it was largely focused on the kind of experience that we want to deliver to the consumer at every single touch point. So what is the relevant touch point for the consumer set that we are speaking with? And how do I activate every single touch point, including, of course, TV, which was one part of it. And as part of this exercise, I, of course, set up the team, not just in India, but we also replicated the team structure globally across. But we also ran some really interesting campaigns. So recently, you would have probably come across Thumbs Up and Biryani, the foundation for that whole Thumbs Up and Biryani combination, and the fact that we should create an experience of hunting for the best biryani and build like a deep association of biryani as a dish with Thumbs Up originated within the end-to-end experiences team. Or you might have seen, some of you might have seen the Coke first metaverse wedding, the first metaverse wedding for India that was sponsored by Coke. The thought process originated from the urge of delivering a high impact experience to the consumers, thereby imprinting the brand in their heads. Cut to Philips. Here we do things a little differently. Also because the nature of the category is really different. So just to take a minute to illustrate, in FMCG or in a company like Coke, you go out to acquire a new consumer or acquire a consumer every week because in the most intense consumption cases, most consumers end up drinking a soft beverage once a week, right? So we call it weekly plus consumers. And that is the space of our acquisition. So every week new acquisition happens. So opportunity to acquire is plenty. Versus in durables, when you buy one durable brand, you do not come back to that category or in the buying cycle for at least the next 7 years, which means my fight to acquire the consumers is far more intense because I'm going to get an opportunity to acquire you as a consumer only once in 7 years. And because the nature of the business is different, the structure of marketing here is really, really different. The marketing here is completely focused on driving deep acquisition. It is focused on a lot on cross selling because one consumer who has come into the brand franchisee with one product is also far more open to considering you as a brand for all the other products that he or she might require. So it's focused a lot on cross-selling. It's focused a lot, therefore, on ROI versus what Coke used to run. I think broadly, from a responsibility perspective, these are the two big differences. From a culture perspective, I think both companies are very unique in their culture. Both companies are now young. Coke is young, so is Philips. Some really diverse people we have at Versuni, and we used to have at Coke people from different kinds of backgrounds, from different parts of the country. from different kinds of colleges, people with different kinds of experiences in the background. So we have someone in our current team who has never worked in marketing before. She spent her career coding and doing tech. We have somebody else who's a designer who's just joined the marketing team and wants to design uh, her way to the consumers' hearts, so on and so forth. So I think in terms of culture, the companies are rather similar in terms of the kind of people they have, the way they treat people, the quantum of responsibility that's laid on people. But in terms of what I was doing there versus what I'm doing here, there is a marked difference, primarily driven by the difference in category behavior.
So, as you mentioned about the difference in category behavior, you also said that because of the different categories, the way that you go about with the whole marketing process is much different.
Yeah.
So, is there a certain procedure that you enjoyed more than the other in terms of the category and acquiring consumers, or is it just very different and you're not able to compare?
Um, so as a person, I'm a very result-oriented person. I mean, it's all great to say that, so what if you did not win? You at least competed. I am very competitive by nature and I'm extremely result-oriented. Uh, Being able to deliver results and definitive results gives me a lot of joy, personal joy. Um, what happens in industries like durables or in companies like Versuni is that the attribution of the action that you've taken to the results that have been delivered is very straightforward. I'm very easily able to identify the impact of whatever I do. Versus in FMCG, where a lot of things are done really by systems or by structures and processes that really run 80% of the company. The exact impact on business of what you've done takes a little while to surface. So while you would have contributed to the brand, and over a period of time, you will see the equity of your brand strengthen or evolve or something. What I experience here is a direct result. And I think that is something that excites me tremendously. And I enjoy that quite a bit. Uh, However, there was something at Coke that I used to really enjoy, which is the fact that Coke is probably the only brand in the world that can give you a taste of scale like nobody else can. For example, working with a property like ICC and deep integrating with them to co-create campaigns. It's phenomenal. I don't think that's the level that level of experience, that level of exposure too many brands in the world can give you. Or working with properties like FIFA World Cup, or working with having a large number of Bollywood stars, Olympic athletes, cricketers as your ambassadors and closely working with them day in, day out, not just for shoots of TVCs, but across different kinds of aspects of marketing. I think that was immensely exciting there as well. So I think both brands and both companies have had their pockets of excitement as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just collecting a lot of these experiences as I go along.
Okay. So in your previous roles in Philips itself, you were a category director, first for health and wellness, and then for personal care. So what were your key responsibilities as category director, and how does that differ as CMO now?
So as category director, at least in the Versuni world or in the Philips world also, the role is far more business focused. I am responsible for day-to-day direct business delivery, both at a top line and a bottom line level. Now that I have evolved as a chief marketing officer, two things have changed. One, I am also a lot more responsible for. So my primary responsibility is towards the building of the brand, and building of the business sort of follows. Second, and more importantly, when I was in my previous profiles, I was looking after specific businesses for Brand Philips. At the moment now, I am zoomed out and I look at the overall big picture, all businesses across two brands. Just to sort of illustrate things, in my previous avatar, in my previous roles, I would make myopic decisions that will impact only my business in my country, in my brand. Today, I zoom out and I make choices between businesses. Instead of saying, hey, this business is going to drive, or I have a number to deliver for this business and I must spend a definitive money there. If I see there is opportunity in another business, I will redirect my investments. Or I have two brands to play with. So if I see more opportunity in one brand versus another opportunity in another brand, I take those calls now at a much zoomed out, higher level. So I think those are the broad differences between what I used to do earlier and what I'm doing right now.
And as CMO, what's something that's a part of your role that you enjoy the most, that you look forward to coming to work for?
Yes, and that part also is one of the big differences that is there between my previous roles and this roles, which is that in my previous roles with Philips, I used to have 2 or 3 people reporting to me. Now I have a full-fledged 40-member team reporting to me, who are not even all located in the same city. So I have a multi-city, multicultural, genuinely diverse team that I need to run to be able to deliver on the objectives that have been set out for us. And I think that constitutes also the largest part of excitement, the part that makes me get out of bed every day and trek to office, simply because my team is composed of some really young and bright people. Um, the average age of experience, the average number of years of experience in my team is about 6.5 years. And that is a time when you have, so you've shed your B school baggage. I wouldn't call it baggage, but almost like when you get out of B school, you're really starry-eyed, right? You expect corporate world to be like this really swanky, glamorous place, hunky dory, whatever. And then you come and sit in cramped offices and take photocopies, and the glamour starts to wash away, right? But at 5, 6 years of experience, you have enough realism in you to know what to expect. You have seen some bit of work, and there is enough excitement in you to know that there is opportunity to do that work. So it's such a prime position to work with people. At that point in time, when you start working with people and you have the opportunity to really shape their ideas, shape their thought process, inspire them to do really the best work of their careers, I think that is what genuinely excites me a lot. So given that I'm extremely result oriented and result focused myself, I like to try and shape my teams in that manner. Um, and one of the things that I keep telling them every day is that I really don't care if you love me or hate me. I am not aspiring for you to love me. The only thing that I want is for you to reflect back on your career, wherever you are in your career, you do that reflection. You recall this time period spent with me as the time where you did the best work of your career. And I think that's the goal that I'm really chasing for myself as a team lead. And that particularly excites me because 40 people, believe you me, covers all diversity that's possible. So it's pretty exciting.
So you mentioned that your team is not just in your office, but it's spread across India and also is culturally diverse. So how do you manage this? How do you manage to get all different kinds of people oriented towards the same goal and towards your way of thinking?
It's tricky, I'll be honest, because people come with their own thought processes, their own ways of interpreting anything that you say or do. And it is genuinely very tricky to cognize for all the differences that people come with and see how do you get them together to work towards the same goal. I think 2 or 3 things that have worked for me. One, I believe in over communication. I actually don't think there's anything called over communication. As much as you can communicate with your team over and over and over again, it just helps simplifying, clarifying a lot of things. And I don't just mean this as a one-way exercise. I mean this as a two-way exercise. So I have in Versuni, we have a hot desk system. So none of us have cubicles. We sit on open desks, which means we are 100% approachable. At any point in time, anyone can walk up to us and ask us a question. In particular, I like to encourage my team to come in and ask me questions whenever they have a doubt, irrespective of whether the doubt is right, wrong, logical, illogical, it doesn't matter. They should feel comfortable enough to come up and ask me a question, debate with me, discuss with me, argue with me until the time they're convinced. I think this two-way communication and believing that there's nothing called over communication is one super helpful thing that helps me help them see the vision that I'm seeing, the role that I see them playing in achieving that vision, and the fact that I'm here to really support them, coach them into working towards that vision. That's one thing that's really helped me. The second thing that's really helped me is, and that's by the way the more difficult thing. So beyond being an extremely result focused person, I'm also a micromanager. I find it very difficult to delegate. And in my natural self, I like to hover over people and then remove them and take stuff in my own hands and start doing it myself. With great difficulty, I have coached myself. In fact, I'm in the process. I think I still have some way to go to really explain things to people. So, explain the outcome, explain the role, and then take a step back and hold them accountable for the outcome. It is really difficult, believe you me. Sometimes when you see the train going off track, you want to really jump in, take the steering wheel, and bring it back on track. But I realize sometimes that it's important that you don't do that. It is important for the person who's driving to have that learning, but also have that ownership, have that joy of success, also feel that pinch of failing. Uh, and I think the fact that I have been able to make some progress towards that goal as a person has been immensely helpful because it allows my team to be autonomous, but not lawless because they also know they will be accountable for the results. So they are able to experiment, explore, and I think that also helps them take much higher ownership of the goal, see the vision that they are in. If at any point in time they are confused or they want sounding board, I'm available for them. So I think a combination of these two attributes sort of helps. But it's
I
a
think
journey. I think I'm
that's a
still
great
not
way.
yet. I
Yeah,
haven't reached the holy grail yet.
I think though rightly said, that's a great way of still keeping that sense of freedom with the people under you, as well as making sure that they are taking responsibility and honest for the work that they have to do.
Yeah.
Um, So moving on to the next question, from all your years in marketing, has there been a specific campaign that you still think about sometimes, one that stood out to you or stuck with you after all these years?
Um, Actually, all my campaigns have been really special. Um, Not because I particularly enjoy shoots or in fact, my most memorable campaigns will actually not incorporate shoots at all. I don't like shoots. I don't like creating DVCs. I think that's the part of the job that must be done. Best enjoyed by marketers when they have 5, 6 years of experience. Beyond that, nobody wants to enjoy it. But one of my most memorable campaigns has been something which I call no money marketing. I was also given the award for being the no money marketer when I did that campaign. This was way back in 2015 or 16. I don't remember exactly now which year, but I remember very clearly that that was the year when so festive season in this industry is really big. 40% of the industry sales really happens in the festive season. Festive season starts somewhere around August and then continues right up till November. So August to November of the season, when 40% of the industry sales gets clocked. So it's a really big season, and all brands across all durable companies, both white goods and brown goods, prepare really well for us. So we have festive plans. All our campaigns go on air at that point in time. Our promotions go on air at that point in time. New launches get established, so on and so forth. Back in that year, I remember we were having a very tough year. And when we were preparing for the festive plan, I clearly remember we did not have any A&P left, even within just 5, 6 months of the year gone by, because our performance wasn't up to the mark. There was a budget freeze or something, and we did not have money. Uh, and I was under tremendous pressure to figure out how do I create excitement during festive without necessarily having any additional money to spare. So we kept thinking, and that was the time when Paytm was really becoming more aggressive. Mobile wallets were not as common as they are today, but mobile wallets had beginning to were beginning to surface. Paytm was the forerunner, all of us know, and they were beginning to become significantly aggressive to acquire more consumers. So I decided to take a moonshot, and I called up my and asked to be connected to somebody. So it took me about a few calls to get to the corporate office and then finally get to somebody who was worthwhile. I used LinkedIn, I called up people on randomly cold called and stuff. But I finally managed to connect with somebody in their alliances team. And we managed to strike an alliance which allowed them access to all the consumers that we will acquire. And in return, they gave us an offer which was first of its kind in the industry. It was a pure play cashback offer. Pure play cashback offers, anybody will can tell you in the industry, are the most expensive offers to run because that's direct cash layout. Whatever number you commit to the consumers, that same number has to be paid because the provider of the promo has to pay that amount of money to the consumer. It somehow so worked out between the two of us that gave us an offer which in our industry before, and we were able to give them access to all the consumers that we acquired. That was one campaign that I will always remember in my life because without a single rupees worth of outlay, we generated business worth nearly 100 crores and Paytm acquired consumers nearly worth 100 crores. It was such a win-win, beautiful partnership between two companies with zero extra payout happening from either side. It was phenomenal. And I think this will always remain one of the most memorable campaigns or I don't know, marketing activities of my life because it constantly reminds me that there's nothing called impossible. When you're pushed against the wall, probably your creative best comes out. And that's my favorite story of all time from my career.
Yeah, that sounds like a great source. Um, so moving on to Philip's key values as a global brand. So this is something that Philips keeps very close to their heart, right? As a brand, they take pride in innovating to address global health challenges. So could you elaborate a bit on this and on the process of how Philips goes about doing this as a company?
So I would start by modifying what you said a little bit. Philips takes pride in innovating, not necessarily only about, or not necessarily only in the space of addressing global health challenges, but their mission is in life is to improve people's lives. In fact, at one point in time, I remember we used to have a goal. We used to have the signage in our office which said our target was to improve X billion people's life by a certain time period. So our mission in life was to or is to improve people's lives, and we do that improvement in people's lives through innovation. Healthcare is one of the businesses that Philips is in, but Philips is also as a brand operating across multiple other businesses. There is a lighting business, there is audiovisual equipment business, there is household products business, and Philips is known for innovating across every single one of those categories with the aim of improving people's lives, right? One very stellar example of that, and you'll find actually examples of that across all the businesses that we've gotten into. One very stellar example of that from the business that I run is a product called Air Fryer, which is a world first innovation where a device was created that could actually fry without oil. It wasn't something that anybody had thought of, and world we do know is suffering from a cholesterol crisis of sorts, India leading from the front. But also world over, cholesterol crisis and heart diseases is something that is leading from the front and is one of the biggest um, sleepydemics, as some people call it, of humanity at the moment. And there was a realization that it's definitely important for us to start improving the quality of the food that we eat. But I think Phillips also realized that it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to really execute as humans, as consumers, as people. Even if I tell you today, oh my God, health and fitness is so important, etc., etc., tomorrow morning when I have to go for jogging, the first thing my brain will throw up is two excuses to not go. I have to get to office early and I have a call early morning. Let's skip jogging. That's a natural reaction, right? We don't want to really make an effort to improve our lives. And Phillips realized that when it comes to food, for example, everybody understands that they should eat healthier, but people are not willing to compromise on taste. So the challenge that they took upon themselves is to create something which would enable consumers to eat healthy, but without compromising on taste. And that was the starting of a journey. So all Philips innovation starts with a consumer need, a consumer truth, converted to a challenge. So it's never make a device that makes healthy food. Frankly, there could be 100 devices that could make healthy food, but the real challenge is in saying make a device that would make healthy food. Hey, but you know what? It needs to have taste. It needs to be tasty as well, because otherwise people won't eat it. And therefore, that defines Philips's innovation philosophy, which is to say you innovate in a manner that consumer adapts your innovation. And I think that's the philosophy that they've used across businesses, whether it is home appliances or it is healthcare, or it is personal care, or lighting for that matter, or healthcare for that matter. And that's their innovation philosophy, which they continue to play across the globe. We have R&D centers across various countries in the world, which continuously work towards identifying what's the next best thing to be able to bring to the world.
So another key value of Philips is doing business responsibly and sustainably, right? So how does this tie into the agenda of what you just said, and how does, as a company, how does Philips manage to tie these two in together and still be able to get the results that they do?
So Philips has always believed in the merit of taking small steps in the right direction. If you notice, our essence is innovation, not invention. So we don't claim to like discover a new planet in the galaxy, but we aim to really innovate. And innovation, by definition, is about taking small steps to improve, change, bring about a lasting change, right? And Philips's approach to sustainability is pretty similar to that. For example, and it's a very small thing, but it's a very definitive step. All of Philips products, we sell more than 1 billion units every year across the globe, across different businesses that we sell. And all of these products come in boxes. Now, any of you who has ever received a shipment from Amazon, I can guarantee every single one of you would have received from any e-commerce player or any product that you might have bought. You will realize that once you open the top box, there is a whole lot of plastic that is inside, which covers your product, which is used for cushioning your products. More than covering your product, it's used for cushioning your product during transit and during transportation. Philips was one of the first players in our industry which decided to move away from cushioning plastic and convert everything to paper pulp. So if you open any Philips products today, you will see that for cushioning material and to protect our products from damage during transportation, we do not use any plastic cushion. What we use is paper pulp, which helps us reduce significant quantum of plastic waste that would have otherwise gotten generated. That's one of the small steps that we do. Subsequently, you will see it. You will see it also in the next few days. I think World Environment Day is either just past or just somewhere around the corner. We take small steps in terms of our cause for CSR is around sustainability. We plant more trees across the globe to ensure that there is better air quality available for consumers to really breathe, despite the fact that we are in the air purifier business. And from a business sense, we would like to sell more air purifiers, but that's a solution of a problem in the immediate term. But we work very, very significantly towards planting more trees, towards conserving water. And the fact that we look at sustainability, or Philips looks at sustainability as a combination of many small steps taken, makes it or enables the brand to really do so without dramatically disrupting business. It actually becomes a way of life rather than a separate vertical which somebody separate is running as a separate agenda. And I think that's the real secret to Philips being able to deliver on multiple counts while still being responsible, sustainable, and all of those things.
Okay. Um, so last question from my side at least, and this has got nothing to do with Philips. It's more about your personal interest. As you mentioned also in the Women's Day chat, that you like to work with startups and provide mentorship to them. So could you elaborate more on the kind of startups that you like to work with, and what exactly is the relationship between you and the startup founders or the people that are working at the startup?
So let me start at the top first. The reason why I love to work with startups is because I am a failed entrepreneur myself. if you go through my LinkedIn career journey, you will see that after about 4 or 5 years of having worked with ITC, I quit my job. And you'll see a couple of years break between that job and my next job. And during that break, I was setting up and running my own e-commerce venture. I had a food aggregator portal called Hunger Pangs at that point in time. I was a solopreneur and I founded this. So it was a Swiggy equivalent, just to draw a parallel and illustrate what it was. But many years before Swiggy was founded. This was something that I had started way back in 2012, based out of Calcutta. And I was a solopreneur. So I took a couple of years to really set up the whole 9 yards, the algorithm, the marketing, the contracts, the operations, everything else. And at the end of that time period, I still wasn't able to scale up enough or make enough money to be able to continue. I had used up all my savings. And at that point in time, VC money wasn't as prevalent as it is today. Also, I think I personally wasn't as exposed to the whole startup ecosystem as I am today. So I at some level in my heart probably carry that seed of wanting to be an entrepreneur and not having been able to make it. I think that is something that propels me and attracts me towards startups. When I work with them, there are different kinds of relationships that I can have depending on what the startup founder or the founding team themselves want. I sometimes work with them in advisory capacity. I also work with them on in an investor capacity. I also work with them purely in a consulting capacity. I mentor a lot of startup founders because from experience, I can tell you that starting up is an extremely isolating journey. What a startup founder experiences on a day-to-day basis, trust you me, a lot of us entrenched in the corporate world can't even imagine because we always have peer group who is sooner or later experiencing similar journey as we are. Being a startup founder completely isolates you and cuts you out of that circle. And it sometimes can become really, really difficult to cope with the lows that come with starting up. So I sometimes just mentor startup founders to ensure that they don't quit at the wrong time. The different kinds of relationships. The way I select startups, honestly, there isn't really a fixed format or a fixed sector, etc., that I work with. Um, the idea needs to excite me, but more than the idea, the founder needs to excite me. I strongly believe that the success or the lack of it, especially in a startup, is hugely determined by the passion and the conviction that the founder brings on board. And if there are startup founders whose ideas might not be perfect or might not be the best ideas across the board, but the startup founder has a huge amount of conviction and passion, I try to work with them. I am particularly partial in favor of women founders, also because I think just like a lot of other fields in the world, women have a bit of a raw deal here as well. I've sat on a couple of investor tables also, and I have personally experienced and seen the kind of questions women get asked are very different also sometimes from the kind of question male founders get asked. And I think it's unfair. So I'm also particularly partial in favor of women founders. But those are pretty much the 2 or 3 filters or criteria that I use before I start working with a founder seriously.
Thank you for that. Um, I'm now done with my questions that were pre-prepared. I'm opening the floor to anyone else who has any questions for Pooja. Please feel free to unmute and ask questions.
Thanks, thanks, Anna. Hi, Pooja. It was very inspiring to know that you yourself were an entrepreneur. So I know, leaving aside the fact that it was way ahead of time. So is there any learnings you could you have taken and applied here? I'm talking about the paper cups stint which you had.
Sure. Apply where, Anil? In my
In
professional life, in my
yeah, in
job?
professional, yeah.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Anil. Yes, plenty. If there was one phase in my life which I attribute or would label as the highest learning phase, it would be probably my startup stint. Primarily because, and the biggest difference between running a startup and working in a corporate job is that we don't realize the kind of luxuries we get used to when we are inside a corporate job. And I'll give you a very small example. It might sound stupid to some people, but it's a felt example. Um, we all sit in these corporate offices, have 5 cups of coffee a day, take 10 printouts, have peons to chaperone around, have teams to support us, etc. As a solopreneur, when you are spending your own money to really build a business, every single cost starts counting. There is a clock that goes into your head even when you go and take one printout, because you realize one colored printout costs 10 rupees. And then you suddenly start realizing, oh my God, I have this fixed pool of money. And if I start spending so much money just taking printouts, it's going to be extremely draining for me, right? Um, but jokes apart, what a startup really ends up doing is helps you get into the actual trenches of things. You learn business operations like nothing else can teach you. You realize the real challenges that come from manufacturing, the real challenges that come in logistics. Purely hiring and retaining people can be an extremely painful exercise, because you have to identify the right people, keep them motivated, then get them to deliver without the cushion of a known brand. And I think a lot of learnings from that period have been extremely helpful for me when I've now come back to corporate world. First and foremost, I think I have a lot more empathy for different functions that I don't necessarily run. So I run marketing. I have been a marketing professional, but I have tremendous respect and empathy for all the other functions that I don't run, like logistics, supply chain, manufacturing, customer service. Because when you start setting up that on your own, and when you man a customer service helpline on your own, and some customer who's ordered a 10 rupee worth of rasgulla is abusing you on phone, and you feel frustrated, you really do realize what could be the angst of somebody who's running, a consumer care operation. So I think it's definitely made me a lot more empathetic than I was before my startup stint. It's also helped me cement a lot of fundamental understanding about business. The fact that beneath all the fancy PowerPoint presentations that we end up making, beneath all the glib talk that we end up doing in different forums at different levels of hierarchy, there is a core business that exists which needs to be super strong. And if those business fundamentals are not in place, if that business is not super strong, sooner or later your bluff will be caught out. And I think these are the two biggest learnings that I use every day ever since I've come back to corporate business, is that I always try to get into the depth and see whether the fundamentals of the business are doing really well. I look at parameters like VOCA, inventory, daily run rate, stuff like that, which at a CMO level, I might not really need to. But I think those parameters, that learning gives me the confidence of knowing that, yes, my business is built on strong foundations, and it will survive the test of time, I would say.
Great. Thank you so much. So it means like, it made you more detail oriented than what you were before.
Definitely, definitely. No two ways about it.
Thank you, Pooja.
Thanks, Anil, for that question. There's a question in the chat from Rakshit, so I'm just going to read that out, Pooja. If a new entrant with deep pockets enters the durables category and invests 2 times of what you are doing, and you mentioned the repeat period of a customer is 7 years, which makes it very hard to get them back, then how do you protect your share of the pie? Do you go all out and outshout the competition, or do you wait and watch for the impact of such advertisers on their brand metrics?
Thanks for the question, Rakshit. I think every brand has their own strategy. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately, the investment of a lot of money doesn't. That's a good player like us who are in the defending position every time there's a new entrant who comes in. Brands like Philips, I can tell you that we believe in the strength of our brand, and we believe in therefore waiting for the other person to outshout their lungs and finish up with their capacity. Rarely would you have seen Philips going super aggressive and chasing behind a new entrant, and there have been plenty new entrants in the durable space as well. In fact, it is such a space with such low entry barriers that continually every year probably there are 10 new brands that come and 10 brands that go away. But also it's a very complex business. What it seems from the outside, this business is one unique business that is not dependent only on brand sales or only on brand building. It requires a humongous amount of investment in product thinking. It requires a humongous amount of investment in customer service, after sales service, extremely important. It is hugely dependent on inventory turnaround rates, on commodity prices, so on and so forth. So operations of the business are so heavy and intensive that it is difficult for any new entrant to come in, invest 2x, and keep investing 2x till such time that they are able to build a brand and outrun us. It has happened in the past. Lots of people have come and they do grow up to a certain size. So, for example, several brands who have entered in the last decade or so have reached, let's say, a turnover value of 150, 200 crores. Thanks to their freshness, thanks to the newness factor, thanks to some of the innovative stuff that they would have done. But breaking the ceiling of the 200 crores and getting into actually the big league is what really makes it very, very difficult for brands, not just in this industry, but across industries. And that's where brands like Philips, who've got a legacy, a resident brand strength, and a strength of innovation pipeline, which continues to feed good products to them continually, I think really helps. So as a strategy, Philips as a brand does not really believe in outshot. We're far too self-assured for us to feel threatened by any new competitor and start out shouting them. Could be both good and bad, but I think I like to take pride in the brand and its attitude. So that's what we end up doing.
Answering that. Just a little follow-up on that. As you said that there are a lot of new entrants because the barriers to entry are very low. And you said certain brands have succeeded in reaching the 150, 200 crore threshold, and then sort of that's where they start slacking. So what do you think to cross that sort of plateau that they face? What is the most important thing in the durables category that you need as a brand to actually make it past that?
The most important thing that is needed is a commitment to get into the business for the long term. So one of the things that you will see as a trend in the new startup culture across industries is that founders invest in businesses, get them to a certain level, and then they want to exit at extremely high valuations and extremely high returns. I'm not against that. Anybody who is able to do that, it's fantastic for them. But for industries like durables, for you to be able to cross that 150, 200 crore mark, you need to actually commit to being in that industry and build a brand over a long period of time, which means you will have to, for example, probably get out of the D2C and e-commerce space and start going offline, because this market continues to be dominated by offline even as we speak. Even as we speak, more than 65%, 70% of the market sits in offline stores, whether it is traditional trade or modern retail or government canteens and so on and so forth. And to be able to go offline and be able to properly service this channel and service their demand, you will need to invest in infrastructure. You will need to invest in feet on street, which is massive. Most D2C brands actually flounder exactly for that. The second thing, which is super important, is you will have to put down your, you will have to put stake in the ground and start evaluating opportunities to manufacture on your own and manufacture locally, because these are not extremely high margin businesses. In non-high margin businesses, every rupee saved is a rupee earned. And a lot of saving really comes from investing into your own stuff. A lot of quality control comes from you investing in your own stuff, which is not possible to do in a pure play trading sort of a setup. But that means investing forward ahead of the curve. The third place that takes up a lot of investment but super critical for success in this industry is customer service. Reality is, if you want to break the 150, 200 crore ceiling and you want to enter the big league, you will want to have a consumer in every city of the country. But if you have a consumer in every city of the country, you will have to have the capability to service that consumer in every city of the country, because this is a category where the consumer does not buy and forget or consume and forget. He or she lives with it at least for 7 years, in some cases 20 years also. And if even after 20 years of purchasing something, you don't get good customer service, social media is your oyster. People will go and start abusing the brand and your brand will go down the drain in one day. So I think brands, if there is a brand which is genuinely committed to staying in the business for the long term and is willing to make these forward infrastructure investments, I think those are the brands that brands like Philips should be seriously scared of, or we consider them serious competition and start taking note and then start probably putting in place strategies to counter them. Others, they will get acquired, somebody else will buy, and then somebody else will buy. I think it's not something that we can deal with on a daily basis.
Thank you for answering that. One more question in the chat from Megha. How do you strengthen the
Yeah,
after-sales
I'll ask that,
service?
I'll ask that actually. So,
Okay.
Pooja, I just want to understand that how, as a brand, so there is a lot of, positive and negative sentiments that even the consumers really put on social media, post their experiences on the products. So on the kind of negative sentiments that happen post their product experiences, or from after sale services, how does a brand really make sure that the after sale service is as strong as the experience for the consumer becomes really trustworthy? So are there any things that a brand should keep in mind, or something that should be followed?
Mika, I think the starting point of having really strong customer service or really strong customer experience is in defining what the brand really means by strong customer service. And I'll give you an example which I personally love. Amazon is a brand that claims, or they publicly claim themselves to be the most consumer centric company on earth. And in my personal experience, purely as a consumer, every time I have interacted with their consumer service, I have experienced this firsthand. The quantum of priority they give to a disgruntled consumer, or at least they've given to me in my times of disgruntlement, to resolve my problem, the quantum of attention, the speed of reaction is all stellar. It's extremely delightful. Because the brand at some point in time has identified that it wants to be the most consumer centric, they have built their whole infrastructure to take note of even small consumer complaints and resolve them till such time that the consumer is willing to give them a 5-star rating, right? So it originates right from the business pillars that you construct for yourself, or the culture that you want to build inside your company. Once that is sorted, I think the rest of operations are relatively easy to do. Where most brands flounder is in defining what they really mean by wanting to build a consumer centric company, or what do they really mean by wanting to give a positive experience. The moment a brand is able to accurately define it, the rest is easy. Most brands end up saying good words, but not really defining it, and therefore it gets left open to interpretation. What is good for me might not be good for someone else, and so on and so forth, and it becomes difficult to execute at that point in time. So the first step to strengthen customer service is to define what do you really want as an outcome in as objective terms as possible.
Sure. Do you have an experience to share from an after sale service? Uh, for the brands that you worked, where you thought that the after sale services really needed a check, or really need to be transformed, because while the product and everything was in place, but the after sale service was not really giving the consumer the correct experience, and that was really bringing a lot of negative sentiments on social media?
I don't think I'd want to name a brand. I don't want to sound like I'm ranting in front of a group of people, but plenty brands that all of us would have experienced in our lives where we bought the product because we thought that the brand was good. But when an installation was required, or when there was a problem and you needed it to be resolved, plenty brands just turn their backs and say, sorry, boss, not happening. Once sold cannot be taken care of by us forever. What I try to look out for instead is some really positive seller experiences. And I'll give you a very interesting case that I experienced with my brand's customer service very recently. And I also discovered this as a consumer, not as somebody who works here. I called up the customer care for something. I wanted to get something delivered at my mother's place from the service center. So I called up. And the person committed to me that they are going to send it to me within a certain time band. Within the next 1 hour, my location changed, my mother's location changed. So I wanted to reschedule the delivery. So I called up the helpline again, and the IVR told me that we noticed that you have called us again on the same day. So we will connect you to the same person who spoke to you the last time so that you don't have to give context. I was delighted. I think it is such a stellar experience to give, because my most frustrating moment as a consumer is having to talk to different consumer care executives and keep giving them the whole background, whole context. The fact that somebody picked it up and solved for it is enough to delight me, even if they're 2 hours late or they don't accommodate my requests, etc. So I think identifying those experiences or identifying those genuine pain points and addressing them becomes super important if you genuinely want to give a good consumer experience.
Thanks, Pooja.
We're running out of time, so one last question. Saibriti, do you want to ask the question?
Yes, Anna, thank you so much. Hi, Pooja. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. So this question is related to your last role in the in your previous organization, basically Coca-Cola. So when it comes to Coca-Cola, right, like there is a lot of content creators on social and YouTube who usually promote, like the amount of sugar content and all that things. Like how do you tackle these things? Like what it is very evident that whenever a user sees a Coca-Cola ad, it is always the first thought is that it's very refreshing and things like that, and all those negative things are just bypassed through brain. Like how, what are the strategies, or like how do you tackle such
I
posts on
think
social by content
at
creators?
Coke or at any company that creates any product that might have side effects or that might not necessarily be 100% healthy. By the way, there's nothing called 100% healthy. Huh? Anybody who masquerades also as 100% healthy, there are always two sides to the same coin. So there is absolutely everything that could be misused or could do harm in manners that you will only discover over a period of time. But in such companies, we believe very, very clearly that we are talking to capability to take decisions for themselves after identifying and deciding what is right, what is wrong. We do what we believe is ethically right. So, for example, there are certain very clearly laid out principles. All the bottles of Coca-Cola will have nutritional information very clearly printed on the label, including declaring how much amount of sugar that has, how much amount of calories that has, so on and so forth. Coke has a very, very strict policy of not marketing to children. You will realize that Coca-Cola targeting, Coca-Cola advertising definitely never speaks to children. It's a very, very strict policy at Coke. But as long as we are marketing to adults of sound mind who are considered fit enough to identify who is right to run our country, i.e., you can vote after 18, we believe that it is safe to assume that adults will also have enough consciousness to understand what is right for them, what is wrong for them. We obviously also recommend always consumption in moderation. So you will never see Coke promoting anybody to do binge drinking, for example, or stuff like that. We do promote drinking of Coca-Cola also in moderation, always across all formats. But short of that, I think we believe in the wisdom of human adults, and that's what we leave the rest to.
100% Pooja, I 100% agree on the point. I didn't question the marketing strategy of Coke at all, but just wanted to know how just Coke would tackle the defamation caused by the content creators on various platforms. Guys.
It doesn't matter, Saipratik. You will realize that over a
Okay.
period of time, for everything, there are plenty people who say good things and there are plenty people who say bad things about it. And I think the fact that people are willing to go out on a limb and make content about you is testimony to the fact that you are a brand that makes an impact. Nobody
Correct.
does that for unknown brands, right? People do it only
Yeah,
for known brands simply because they want to ride on the popularity of brand and be seen. So I
correct.
think brands like Coke really take it as a compliment that we are big enough for people to want to target us and they move on and don't really think too much about it.
Thank you so much, Pooja.
Thank you so much for the question.
I know I said that was the last question, but if you have 2 minutes, there's one more question in the chat. If you're okay with just going a little bit overboard.
Sure, I'll take the question.
Okay, Harjimran, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, so I'll just ask the question. This is coming back to the prior talk that we were having on having your post-sales service and service quality, etc. Now, how are the big companies taking into consideration like urban company is a competition on the service uh, aspect of the bigger companies like for example Philips or for example the other Samsung etc, right? They provide you service at a much faster pace as well as at a cheaper cost. How are the big companies dealing with this kind of competition, which is not right directly related to their competition, but it still eats up into the imagery of the bigger companies on the post sale service?
Simran, thank you for the question. Two aspects for the answer. First, I don't think service by urban company eats into the imagery of the parent brand at all. But the fact of how companies deal with it really lies in the way their business model is constructed. So, for example, in durables, if you see, the whole business model is constructed on generating revenue and profits from the product itself. Um, None of these are companies that are built on the model of selling products on loss and then making up profits and revenues from service. There are some product lines that work like that. For example, water purifiers used to be at one point in time built on that promise where the device was sold practically at cost, but companies would make a lot of money on the replacement of candles and filters and so on and so forth. But most of these large durable companies are built product forward, not really service revenue forward. And as long as your business model is built on those principles, players like Urban Company are actually not competitors. They're actually partners because they manage to go where we are unable to go. Running a service setup is incredibly expensive. And all of us know Urban Company is not making money. It is very difficult to be able to provide services at the price that they provide and make money in the long run. I'm sure they have a long-term business model which will help them turn around and become profitable. But for as far as I know, at the moment, they're not making money. And therefore, when they provide service at this amazingly low cost, they actually delight consumers because consumers get a wow, and they also help brands because brands essentially want to sell products. Service is something that we have to sell along with the products or have to create to ensure that consumer complaints are catered to at a later point in time. But if there are other companies, other brands that are willing to do the job for us, so I think they're partners more than competitors. And that's how probably most large brands look at Urban Company, at least in the durable space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pooja. We really had a very insightful 1 hour. And just want to thank you again for taking out the time to help us learn about your experiences and also gain a lot of knowledge. Um, so, yeah, thank you so much. We were really happy to have you here for the mentor mentee session. Megha, would you like to disclose this?
No, yeah, thanks, Sahana. No, I think Pooja, it was a extended version of a learning from the post women's chat we had. Thank you so much for coming and doing this session for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me over. I loved having this conversation, and thank you so much for every single one of you who attended, spent your time listening to me and asked me questions. It was a complete pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye-bye. Have a great evening.